This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I honestly didn't love our game tonight, so I found us, it was 2-2. We were in a pretty good spot, and just give up a goal that, again, just breakdowns in our defensive zone that shouldn't have happened. So, now we have to chase it in the third, and yeah, do we have a couple good looks? We did, but we didn't finish them. So it was a little too late, and it's a little bit frustrating. Just the way the game went, and then so many penalties that weren't even penalties. And I don't know, maybe there was the fear of us having the two teams having fun out there. Nope, let's just call so many penalties that it just took away from the flow of the game. So that didn't help either team, I thought.
Didn't help there was a couple of injuries. Apparently the person in charge of the penalty box should be fired.
That's really the story of last night's game.
Unbelievable. I mean, that's a big part of it for sure, because if he felt like that was directly related to Holmberg missing the game, and it sounds like could be longer, by the way, that is a big deal. I think we'll probably get some information from the team. Yeah.
Once he has a chance to be, basically fully examined, and they can get a sense of the extent of the injury.
You can't run away from injuries.
No,
and
it's the one thing the Lightning needed to avoid here in the last 6 games of the regular season, a significant injury, and unfortunately this looks like a significant injury. John Cooper said as much. He says not good. Usually he's a lot more cryptic if it's not a bad injury. We'll see.
It felt like
think
he knew
he'll be all right. I mean, you can kind of read Coop's response, and he just said flatly, not good. So they knew that this is a bad injury. And that was really the biggest takeaway from last night's game. I know, on the Sabres side, they're like, rah, tied for first. We won 3 or 4 from the Lightning.
Yeah.
We turned it. They had lost a couple in a row. They wanted to play better. They did. I thought the Sabres outplayed the Lightning last night. But, Coop even said during the morning skate press conference, which we talked about on yesterday's show, like clinching the playoff spot was the big goal. I'm not sure the Lightning really care where they finish. One more point gained, they will not be in the wild card, or a point lost by Boston. So we can basically say with full certainty, as close to full certainty as we want, that prediction model may have it 100%. I would say like 99.999%. They are going to finish in the top 3. If they happen to finish in third and they have to start on the road, does that mean they can't win a series? No. So I think that's Coop's mindset. He's like, can we just please get through these last 6 games healthy? Last year it was Bjorkstrand who got hurt late in the regular season. They had other injuries going into the playoffs and in the playoffs. The year before, Glendening got hurt late. We've been through this before. The Lightning are snake-bitten seemingly with late regular season injuries that bleed into the playoffs. This one certainly looks like it'll bleed into the playoffs. Again, hopefully we'll get more of a clear indication of the timetable. But that's why Coop, I think, was probably more irked about the penalty box door than the game. I mean, I don't think he was crazy about how the team played, but
the injury is longer term effects on his team.
It's such an important player to this team. Such an important part of that Yanni Gourde line, which is such an important part of how the Lightning have to play.
No
this
Hagel,
is a
no
big,
Cirelli either.
Big injury.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, this is bothering you a little bit. I can tell because it's...
Well, I mean, I don't have any insight on the penalty box door. I mean, I know the league is going to look into that. I'm just saying, of the players the Lightning could lose to an injury, Pontus Holmberg is a very significant piece taken out. Just what he has meant to that line and what that line has meant to how the Lightning have been able to play this year.
So the immediate question people are going to ask, if this is a longer-term deal, and look, it's going to start tonight, you would think, right, against Ottawa.
Yeah.
Who is the likely candidate to fill that role, knowing, and I think this is the important part, knowing what their role currently is and what it will be come playoff time? Because now
Holmberg missed, I think it was 7 games after Gergensen's return. So Girgensons' return, that's a hard word to say. Or hard Girgensons' return. His return in Game 8 coincided with the Lightning turning around their season. It also coincided with that line getting formed as a line. So Game 8, Girgensons returns. The Lightning go on a 15-3 run. During that 15-3 run, Holmberg missed, I think it was 7 games. I can go back and look and see if it was 7 and when those 7 games were missed. The Lightning were able to navigate through that okay, because that was a 15-3 run. But mostly the line has been healthy since then, and they have been incredibly productive and helpful, with the notable exception of after the Olympics, where, you know, everybody struggled on the team. So let me see the games that Holmberg missed. I'm on the Ottawa side, so I got to scroll down. So your question is who slots in? Well, we've seen Bjorkstrand be there at times. Bjorkstrand and Gord have experience playing together in Seattle in a shutdown role. It's possible when Cirelli and Hagel return, and it sounds like they're both day-to-day. So if fans are worried about Cirelli and Hagel, I'm not getting any concerned vibes from my position. And some of the fans have been like, give these guys some rest. Well, maybe the fans are getting their wish. I do believe that they're probably nursing something and trying to get as healthy as they can for the start of the playoffs. But it was a playoff game tonight. My sense is that Hagel and Cirelli would both play if it were a playoff game tonight. They're day-to-day. So assuming they can come back, whenever they come back, maybe you look at a Nick Paul on that line. All right, Girgensons got injured in the at Washington game on November the 8th. I think Wilson hit him, if I'm remembering right. He missed 7 games. So in those 7 games, I believe the Lightning won all but one. Their one loss was the home Vancouver loss. So unless I'm mistaken, they went 6-1 in his absence, which is excellent. But I mean, he's been such a critical part of what the Lightning have needed to do this year to have success. I'm sorry, they lost 2 games. They lost to the Rangers, they lost to the Canucks with Holmberg out of the lineup. So they went 5-2.
I think your point is well received here, that this is a, I don't want to overinflate Holmberg's importance compared to guys like Victor Hedman being out, because they're 2 different players, but they have 2 different roles. We understand that, but both very important. I think because the way that line is played, and I think because the role they've taken on, which is essentially trying to shut down the other team's top line. Yeah, that's what they've done at a pretty high level. You lose that, now you're asking yourself the question, how much of an impact is that going to be, particularly come playoff time when matchups are a bigger deal?
Very big deal. Yep.
And Holmberg has contributed a little bit offensively, and that's always been nice. And so we saw Sabrin in the lineup last night. Again, Cirelli and Hagel were both out, to your point. So
they had to play Sabrin or go 7D, and tonight they may have to go 7D or choose to go 7D if they're not going to call anybody up.
And look, Sabrin looked fine.
Yeah, he's recovering from an injury too, so they didn't play him a lot in the first 2 periods.
No.
They got that line out there with Perry and Chafee. That was a line fairly regularly in the third period.
And that line was pretty good.
And they had a little ozone time. Yeah, they did.
That line was pretty good. But I don't want to overanalyze the game too much last night. I mean, I think it was a game that, you know, if it wasn't for Andrei Vasilevsky, that game could have been more lopsided. Is it fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair to say.
I mean, how many? Tuck had what, 3 in the one opportunity.
So there are a couple of things with the Buffalo Sabres. If the Lightning and Sabres meet in the playoffs, the Sabres ended up winning 3 of the 4 games during the season series. We have said, do not read too much into what happens during a regular season series when you get into a playoff series. But teams want to play the way that they played during the regular season when they had success, and that success got them into the playoffs. So what do the Sabres do well? The Sabres are a very dangerous team in transition. They attack off the rush. They have guys fly the zone. They look to catch you in counters. They use their team speed, and they have burned the Lightning repeatedly off the rush this year. It happened twice in the first period last night that led to goals. Now, Jeff Halpern joined us in the intermission and said, okay, one was right after a penalty ended. They had the Lightning had kind of a weird line change situation where they got caught a little out of sorts, and the other was off a neutral zone turnover, but they're still in transition. And the 2D on the Tuck goal backed in, gave Tuck, he's got a great shot. I mean, actually, the goal that he scored was probably the longest range shot that he had. The other attempts were much closer to the net and probably even more dangerous, but he zipped that. And then the second goal is off a turnover, and they got their giddy up going. Wow. Like they skated in transition. They also have been effective, and Zucker in particular, at net front. I mean, he scored the winning goal on the power play in the 8-7 game. He got a rebound, but he was in position to actually, it was Doan who scored, but Zucker had the tip, if you remember. And that led to the rebound goal for Doan in the 8-7 game. And then last night he had the tip. So they can score. I mean, but their trademark is their ability to attack with speed, not unlike the Lightning, and generate chances off the rush. If the Lightning play this team in a playoff series, they are going to have to manage the puck better. And what Pat Maroon was talking about last night is gapping up better. And it's not just the defensemen. The defensemen are forced to back in if the other team is coming at them full blast, right? So the back checking forward needs to get involved to try and slow up the rush during the neutral zone. At the very least, so it's a 3-on-3, and they don't have space, right, to find room to create plays. The other thing I'll say about the Sabres is that, all right, Mike Harrington talked about this with us last night or yesterday in the show, but we saw it last night how good they are. When they get a lead in the third period, they are usually like money in the bank. I thought they had a great defensive third period. They were not concerned about like jumping up in the play or generating chances off the rush. So they locked it down. I know the Lightning had an advantage in shots and attempts in the third period, but the Sabres were very clean at coming out of their own zone. They avoided any massive like mistakes with turnovers. And the one game where the Lightning were able to rally in the third period and they won in overtime, that game was tied going into the third. So the Sabres, I think they are now 33-2 or something like that when leading after 2 this year. Very impressive record. That first meeting, it was tied. Sabres got the lead. Lightning scored a power play goal to tie it. Sabres retook the lead, and Radish scored a 6th attacker goal. That was in the first meeting. So the Lightning twice rallied in the third to tie it. That was a little bit of an outlier game for the Sabres. Will that carry over into the playoffs? Who knows? But whether it's the Lightning or whomever gets the Sabres in the first round, keep in mind that if they get a lead going into the third period, they do have some experience this year at locking things down. So those are just two things to keep in mind about Buffalo. They, unlike the Lightning, are fairly healthy. Norris has missed a lot of time this year, but he's healthy now.
Yeah.
Their top 4D are fine. They've got Thompson, they've got Tuck, they've got their guys playing, right?
Sure.
The Lightning are dealing with injuries. That may even out once you get to a playoff series where, some of the injured guys for the Lightning come back, and who knows, a team could be healthy going into the playoffs and get injuries during the playoffs. But the Sabres have had an impressive year. They've gotten everything that they've deserved this year, 102 points, and they are a dangerous team. I still think they're going to have a little bit of a learning curve collectively going into that, first playoff series for a lot of them. But, Lindy Ruff is an experienced coach, and he will probably help them navigate their way through it. But I maintain that, what we saw last night was a little bit of a continuation of when the Lightning have had problems with the Sabres. It's been in these areas where they've gotten exposed off the rush. And the same is true for the team that they are seeing tonight. When the Ottawa Senators have had success against the Lightning, and this building in particular has been a tough building for the Lightning going back the last several years, the Senators have done this to the Lightning, where they attack with speed, they catch them in transition, either straight down the ice 200 feet or turnover counter. So a lot of that is rush coverage / puck management. And last night the Lightning weren't good enough with their puck management. We heard that from some of the players afterward, that their execution with the puck wasn't where it needed to be. And look, if you meet the Sabres or any team in a playoff series, you're going to have to connect all your dots. And a lot of that is executing with the puck. So you're not feeding the other team's attack.
Braden Point avoided a
Yeah, you're right about that.
crazy injury. I mean, as he was pushed into the goalpost, which is a dangerous play. I know Patty Maroon, who did the game with you last night. Is he on tonight again with you on the radio?
He's on the whole trip.
He made the observation. He felt like maybe Braden Point had his legs. Did you?
Yeah, he liked
Do you feel
him.
like that was kind of a positive sign? You know, if we're looking for things, Kuch obviously hits number 400 in his career in goals. So I thought the points play showing some of that explosiveness was positive.
He
If
was
you're looking
skating
for that
last night. Yeah, he was. I mean, as a collective group, the Lightning didn't have a great game. I mean, they didn't. And I think Coop said as much. But there were players that were trying to pull on the rope, and I thought Point was doing what he could to use his greatest strength, which is his speed.
Yep.
Gensel had a good game again. I mean, he's just been so steady. Goal and an assist. You know, he had a chance on a first period power play. Luukkonen made a really good save on him.
It's hard to make these statements because I think when you are a player like Nikita Kucherov, you're pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't Jake Gensel one of the more consistent players you've called or you've watched? I mean, you just know, like, he's not going to go too many games where he doesn't do anything, but he makes a lot of small plays. And then, honestly, I know he's not going to be compared to the players who have, in terms of pace and velocity, wrist shots that are just crazy. Like even Bjorkstrand, we've said, right? He has just a nasty wrist shot. But, I mean, is there a better sniper year in and year out than Jake Gensel?
Well, he had that chance. So I'm thinking about it. He had a chance in the second period before his goal.
Yeah.
It was a 2-on-1, and Luukkonen made a really good glove save on him.
Yeah.
Gensel has surprised. I shouldn't say surprised. I mean, it's hard to say that Jake Gensel at this point in his NHL career is surprising goalies. They should know what is in his toolbox. But wasn't it Phil said he's got a really quick release?
He said it's the quickest
So, I mean, maybe
release on
surprise is the right word. Like when he's in the clear, he snaps the puck. He sometimes catches the goalies a little by surprise, and he's scored some goals high glove. He didn't get it quite high enough on that one chance, but then he went high stick on the goal that he scored. So you think about it, he scored. He had that 2-on-1 chance in the second. He had a power play chance in the first. I mean, he was as dangerous as any Lightning player last night. The difference between Gensel and Kucherov, and there are a lot of differences because there's no player like Kucherov in the NHL.
No.
But broad strokes, Kucherov's game involves more risk. It does. That's how he plays. He attempts plays that other players can't even dream of attempting, right? So many times they work. Sometimes they don't. When they don't, you know, it may lead to a turnover. It may not lead to a chance, but, you know, you may be turning the puck over.
Right.
Gensel has far less risk in his game. Gensel is just like, so his dad was a coach, but I'll say this, Jake Gensel is a coach's dream, right? Because he's always in the right spot. He always seems to make the right decision. If there is a mistake, it's a rare mistake, and he works his tail off to try and, like, make up for it. Like, if he loses the puck, he's going to really pressure you, you know, on the back check to try and get it back or prevent something bad from happening. So, you know, it's kind of like, I don't want to say higher risk, higher reward with Kucherov, but Kucherov is able to add risk to his game because he's such a unique player. Right. Gensel is just a great player in, like, when we say, you know, in baseball, the 5-tool, you know, player. Like, Gensel does so many things at a really, really high level. And the hockey IQ, which we say about Kucherov, but Gensel's hockey IQ is like, where do I need to be? What do I need to do in this situation? What can I do where it's going to help my team but not put my team in a bad spot? That's kind of seems like it's always running through his head. And you add to that immense skill. I mean, he's got immense skill. That's how you get to be a, you know, 35 to 40 goal guy every year, basically.
It's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. I shouldn't say every year. He actually set a career high this year now with, 86 points because he had 2 last night. Yeah. Good for him.
He's going to be his numbers towards the end of his career are going to be pretty fantastic. We thought, I guess maybe we weren't sure what type of game we would see in terms of the, not fisticuffs, but
it had a little
line.
Snarl to it. The 2 fourth lines got involved. I think the Sabres weren't thrilled with Radish, who fought Dahlin in the last meeting. But it was more true about what Coop said. I mean, Lindy Ruff didn't say we're going to have a nasty game. He's like, I don't know what we're going to have. Coop was like, probably not. And I was probably closer to what Coop was saying. There were a lot of penalties. He's right about that. And maybe that, to some extent, nipped it in the bud.
There was some stuff.
5 power plays, and the Sabres had 4, and Coop felt that some weren't even penalties on both sides. But
Dahlin took exception to a Lilleberg check.
That happened early in the game,
And you thought maybe things were going to unravel. I know Corey Perry came to the aid of one of his teammates. It was along the boards. He kind of jumped in.
That was the scrum with the 2 fourth lines.
So there you go. So that was maybe the closest thing we were going to see. I think that
was early. By the time we got to the third period, there wasn't a lot. I mean, the Sabres were like, it's 3-2. We need to lock this down and get our 2 points.
I like the Lightning in that series. If they do play, I think it would be pretty nasty. But I just feel like the Lightning, they've been there. And I do think that would factor into some of these things. Doesn't mean Sabres couldn't win it. And who knows if they're going to play. I'm just giving you my initial observation. I think there are some things that Buffalo can do to make the Lightning a little uncomfortable. I also think there's a lot the Lightning can do to make Buffalo uncomfortable. And I think experience is one of those things. And so time will tell, but we'll see how it plays out. But I know we have some questions from our audience that we want to get to. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on?
So I'm just going to tell you what I think about the penalty box door, which is not much because I have no experience. I've never worked a penalty box door before, but I'll just explain kind of the information as I understand it. For the record, Maroon and I did not notice that, even though we had the Scripps feed. And I got on the bus after the game, and Dave Randorf and Brian Engblom were like, did you see how the penalty box door opened? I'm like, no. And I even said, like, did that make the injury worse? Because, I mean, it still looked like a bad tumble for Holmberg, and I had no idea if the penalty box door becoming ajar. Like, if the door is open and you go into the edge, yes, that I understand, but he went hard against the boards regardless.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know, like, is this a situation that would make it worse? It seems the consensus is yes. Like, would he have sustained the exact same injury if it had been a foot up, right? Or the door hadn't opened? It seems like the injury was made worse by the fact that the door became ajar. So what happened was there were matching penalties called leading to a 4-on-4. The 4-on-4 was about to end. This was the Buffalo penalty box. So Zach Benson's in the penalty box. The time is ticking down. The penalty box attendant, the player doesn't open the door himself, right? There's an attendant in there who opens the penalty box door for the player leaving the penalty box. So the door was, there's a latch. So this I know. I mean, if you've ever been on a hockey bench or in the penalty box, there's a latch. It's a big, like, metal latch that door does not move if the latch is in place. So you basically push down. If you have a gate, like a fence gate, it's not unlike that. You push down on the metal fastener, which lifts it up. That opens the door. Okay? That's usually how it works anyway. I'm not sure if it's made differently in KeyBank Center. So as the penalty time is ticking down, the attendant does need to open the door for the player leaving the penalty box. How soon does the attendant have to pull the latch? I mean, he doesn't want to wait until the penalty is completely over because the player is going to, like, let me out, right?
Yeah, right.
So there's a process there. It's not like, just pushing a revolving door where you can just, or pull it open. You can't do that. There's a step first. So the question is, was this step taken? It seems clear that the attendant undid the latch. It was probably standing at the door. So when Holmberg hit it, it opened a little bit, and then the official was there. He kind of pushed it back closed. Did he do it too soon? Did he jump the gun? The impact apparently occurred 4 seconds before the penalty ended, based on what I read. So the NHL is going to investigate it. I mean, maybe this actually leads to a protocol about, like, how soon you are supposed to unlatch a penalty box door. Having never been a penalty box attendant, though, I don't know what the protocol is, or if there isn't a protocol. Maybe the attendant's like, this is how I do it. Like, within 5 seconds, I'm there, I'm ready, I have the thing pressed, so I can open the door and the player can come out right away. Because the attendant is going to get yelled at if the penalty ends and the door is not open. So understand that. So that's the extent of my knowledge. I may actually ask Maroon, who spent some time in the penalty box during his career, tonight, and be like, how does this work? But it seems clear that the injury was made worse by the fact that the door was ajar, and it is certainly clear John Cooper knows the penalty was about to expire, and in his mind, this was a fireable offense. He said that attendant basically may need to lose their job as a result of it because of the injury. So in his mind, he knew that Benson was coming out of the box. In his mind, this happened too soon. Also, bad luck on where the hit happened, right? If he had fallen a couple of feet in either direction, he doesn't hit the door. It wouldn't have mattered. But he did. So those are my 2 cents on it. Fans who have played the game maybe can add more insight to it. And I'll ask Maroon tonight.
Let us
his opinion on it.
Yeah. Let us know, please. At Bolts Radio, if you want to get involved in the conversation, you can. This question comes from Russo. Says Braden Point needs to get right before the playoffs. He's missing that explosiveness. He just isn't a difference maker. Very mediocre currently, missing the point from Toronto game after the Olympics.
I thought he was closer to the explosive point last night, though, honestly. The one where he went into the post, he showed some speed there. He got behind Matthias Samuelsson. That was a very dangerous play, by the way. And everyone's saying nothing, boo about it. All this, emotional reaction to what happened in the last game on the Buffalo side, especially, look at the number of Lightning players that have been injured in games against the Buffalo Sabres this year. I'm not saying that, they were all intentional. I don't think the Krebs hit on Holmberg was a bad hit. But the Samuelsson push, that is a very, very dangerous play. Needless, too. He didn't shove him, but he pushed him. Pushed him off balance. Could have hurt his own goalie, too. Point might have barreled into Luukkonen and injured Luukkonen. So that was not a good play by Matthias Samuelsson. And Point, fortunately, was not seriously injured on that play.
You shake your head a little bit, because he didn't hit him hard. It was just a shove, but that's enough to...
And
really hurt a player.
I can go down the list. Rasmus Dahlin cross-checks Gonçalves into the boards. Gonçalves misses time due to injury. Kesselring cross-checks James into the boards. That was not what caused the injury, but if Kesselring does not cross-check James face first into the boards, James doesn't react and Kesselring doesn't fall on his leg and injures James. So we can go through the list of, in this rivalry game, where the Sabres are like, Brandon Hagel must pay. There was I don't even know what to call it, a punching thing outside Key-Bank Center, with Hagel's likeness on it. They were getting the Sabres fans riled up. Look, Hagel went after Dahlin last game. Sabres fans didn't like that. I get it. But if we actually are keeping track here, to the best of my knowledge, there's not one Buffalo Sabre who's had to miss any time due to a game against the Lightning, whereas the Lightning have had several players injured. Many of those injuries, the one last night with Holmberg, that wasn't Krebs' fault. He just checked the guy, and what happened was a result of that check. It was a clean body check. But we've seen other plays that definitely toe the line or go over the line where Lightning players have been hurt, and Point could have been seriously injured last night on that play. Look, I try and call it like I see it. If the Lightning were doing dangerous things leading to Sabres injuries, I would call that out too.
What was Pat Maroon thinking, you think, when he saw Braden Point go through?
He was very worried about it.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. And I'm sure if he
was
on the ice...
And he also said Samuelsson pushed him.
Are you surprised? Because I think you asked him when things started to boil over a little bit. I forget what play.
I said, is the chapter closed because
and he said, no.
of Dahlin? He said it's never closed. But he was really talking about if you see the Sabres in a playoff series, you have to be physical on Dahlin. And Harrington said the same thing. Mike Harrington said the same thing. If you're going to play the Buffalo Sabres, you have to try and contain Tage Thompson, and you have to be physical with Rasmus Dahlin. That's the game plan.
Look, it's no different than somebody trying to be physical with Kucherov.
Right.
I mean, you do. You want to hit your best players. I mean, that's just how it is. Tonight, enjoy some Reif Rum, smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bolts. Please enjoy responsibly. Mythos says, right when we got some momentum from Gensel, we gave up a bad goal. Rough.
So that was a great tip from Zucker, but the bad goal part was an unforced icing.
Yeah.
The Lightning didn't need to ice the puck, and that's execution puck management. Now, you can ice the puck, and something bad doesn't have to happen, but they lost the faceoff, and Zucker got his stick free. This guy is a Lightning killer. 16 goals now in 27 games against the Lightning.
That's incredible.
I remember a game. So George Gwozdecki, I love George Gwozdecki. He was an assistant coach with the Lightning for a couple of years, but before that, he was a longtime coach at University of Denver. So he coached Zucker at Denver.
Yeah.
So this is earlier in Zucker's career. He was originally with Minnesota. So the Lightning had a long road trip at the beginning of a season. It might have actually been the 14-15 season, which was a great season for them. And they went out to Western Canada early in the year. They started with 3 or 4 at home. Then they had a 5-game trip out to Western Canada. They played the 3 Western Canadian teams and then finished Winnipeg, Minnesota in a back-to-back. Okay. So I think they maybe won the first 4 games, or they were 3-0-1 or something like that. So they have the back-to-back in Minnesota. We know how bad Minnesota is for the Lightning as a franchise. And Nabokov was the goalie. It might have been one of his first starts. So it was 14-15 because he didn't even last the full season with the Lightning. They lost like 8-1 or something like that. And Zucker I think he had 2 goals. One of them was like a dribbler from center ice that like rolled through Nabokov and went in the net. And I remember seeing Gwozdecki, Brian Engblom knows him well too.
Yeah.
Because they crossed paths when they were younger. They may have played at Wisconsin together. I think he told me Gwozdecki was his roommate. But anyway, I see Gwozdecki after the game. He had a really dry sense of humor. He's like, yeah, I saw Jason Zucker. You know what I said to him? You're welcome. Zucker scored this like dribbler from the blue line. So he scored again last night, right? He scored a huge goal in the 8-7 game on a breakaway. That made it 7-7. So I bring this up, and I see Maroon like looking through the notes. And we came out of a TV timeout, and Maroon is like, most players have a certain team they just love playing against. He's like, for me, it was Philadelphia. Maroon originally was in their organization. Mm-hmm. It didn't end very well. I think he had a little extra something when the team he was on played the Flyers. He's like, for Jason Zucker, it must be the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's like, he must love playing the Lightning. I'm like, this has followed him around, like Minnesota, Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
he was in Nashville, I think. Now Buffalo, everywhere he has gone, he has scored against the Lightning, and he had the winning goal last night. But that was a very good tip. I mean, he got net front. He put that right into the top of the net. But if you're the Lightning, the point was about a bad goal. Unforced icing, lose the faceoff, don't tie up the stick. 3-2. And it was Zucker, like 4 minutes or so after Gensel had tied the game.
Zucker's been a good player.
He's been a good player. You probably remember him pretty well in Pittsburgh.
He was
right?
good. He was always injured, but the year he finally put it together, I think he hit 27. Gavin says, I'm ready to pull my hair out with these Buffalo fans. Sorry, act like you've been here before. They act like they've won the cup. There was a video of them punching a bag with Hegel's face on it yesterday.
That was what all right. The fan put it better than me. Well, look, I mean, I think that they were trying to play up. I said yesterday, once that 8-7 game ended with everything that happened, the Sabres had the big comeback win. It was one of the most memorable games of the year. It was with all the fights. And they were like, oh, Hagel went after Dahlin. And so it gave them something to look forward to, the second meeting in Buffalo, and they played it up. I get it. My point simply was that this has not been like entirely a one-way street. It hasn't. Rasmus Dahlin has definitely crossed the line, which is why the Lightning went after him in the last game. And if we're just looking at injury stemming from head-to-head matchups, the Lightning have had far more injuries coming out of these games against the Sabres than the Sabres have, which, again, sometimes that's just hockey, but sometimes it isn't. Dahlin injured Gage Gonsalves on a needless play. He could have injured Braden Point when Point fought Benson. Remember that in the 6-2 game.
Yep.
So Dahlin had a couple of instances where he gave Lightning players cheap shots, and the Lightning weren't happy about it. That's hockey too.
Yeah.
Right? But yes, Sabres fans definitely had Hagel in their crosshairs. I was aware of that. And I saw that video of the bag or whatever outside the arena.
Look, it's
look, it adds
going to get worse
some,
once you get to
it
the
adds
playoffs.
some spice to the rivalry, right?
It does. Spicy, as they say.
Yeah.
What does Preston say? On the bright side, that first goal we scored helps back up that faceoffs aren't everything. So,
Well,
I
mean, neither of these teams is very good with faceoffs. So the point was they lost the faceoff, but they retrieved the puck. So that was a power play goal for Kucherov. By the way, congratulations to him, as you mentioned, his 400th goal.
Yep.
So I'm going to disagree a little bit with that because usually when you lose the faceoff, you don't retrieve the puck. They lost the faceoff. Had the Sabres been able to clear that, probably the power play ends. So, I mean, you can overcome a deficiency in the faceoff circle, but it is far more advantageous to win faceoffs, especially offensive and defensive zone faceoffs, especially special teams faceoffs in the offensive and defensive zones. That one was an exception because Point barreled in there. Point didn't get a point on that goal, but he had an impact. He stole the puck. They got after that puck and they retrieved it, and they worked it around, and eventually Kucherov scored. I want to say very quietly, but maybe it is quietly because the Lightning absolutely got schooled in the circle on Saturday against Boston, 40-18. Nick Paul has strung together 2 really good games in the circle consecutively, and one was against Boston.
Yeah.
In a game in which they lost 40 of 58 faceoffs, Paul, I believe, went 6-1. Very much an outlier. And last night, he went 13-5. So if he continues to produce in the circle, even on his weak side, the Lightning may start leaning on him. He's their one guy over 50%, other than James, who before his injury just nicked over 50% because, his season is over, the regular season. That's where he's going to finish. I do want to mention him, though, because he's been skating, which to me is ahead of kind of what we were thinking as far as his timeline, which was going to take us well into the playoffs. So Ed Encina talked to him yesterday because he was on the ice. And it sounds like James, is targeting the beginning of the playoffs, which would be amazing. Like, that would be well ahead of schedule. We'll see if it transpires.
That'd be a big deal.
That's maybe his hope. Unclear, but he was skating out there with the regular jersey. It was an optional skate, but he didn't have the red jersey on for non-contact. He didn't have the red jersey on for non-contact. He had a regular jersey on, meaning he was able to absorb contact. And also Crozier and Carlisle have been skating too.
That's all positive.
Very positive. Yeah.
Yeah. All good questions, everybody. Let's see. Adam, this is kind of speculation. I hope Holmberg's injury isn't as bad as it looks. Seemed like a collarbone fracture or shoulder separation. Horrible loss, if so. Yeah, I mean, it didn't look great.
Yeah.
And Gavin says last year, Glendening
got hurt late
surgery,
in
right?
2 straight seasons.
Yeah.
But, I think he definitely played last year in the playoffs. I think he played through it 2 years ago, too, but he was affected.
Mythos wanted to know, does Geeky or Peltier get a call up potentially?
So if the Lightning are not going to play Hagel and Cirelli tonight, they do have Santini. They could go 11-7.
Yeah.
Now, you're at a point, if Hagel and Cirelli are injured, and they're day-to-day, and you don't have Holmberg, you can do an emergency recall if you can make the cap fit. With Hedman on long-term injury, I think that they would be able to do that, but I'm speaking a little out of turn here. So, Mythos, yes, they could theoretically call up a player, and it's actually not that difficult. I don't know the flights, but it's not as difficult to get from Syracuse to Ottawa. I mean, Syracuse, New York is not that far from the Canadian border. I don't know how many flights there are, how easy it would be for a player to get here, but they would have made that decision probably last night. And I haven't seen any word that they called anybody up. So if they don't make another move and the players that weren't able to play last night are still not able to play, then you're looking at Santini coming in and the Lightning going with 7D. This is going to be a tough game. I mean, we said this even before the Holmberg injury. Ottawa has everything to play for. Everything. I mean, they are in these two races are crazy for the second wild card in the West, the second wild card, and up into the Metro in the East.
Yeah.
And Ottawa's right in the mix. I mean, they have 5 games left. If they win all 5, they're in. They don't need. I think they can even go 4-1 and get in potentially, because they have an advantage with the tiebreak. But they have the Lightning. They have the Panthers. The Panthers and the Lightning have had some like adjoining trips here. They were out west in Western Canada when the Lightning were there north of the border on the east side. Now, as the Lightning are, so they flip flop. The Canadians play the Panthers tonight. The Lightning play the Senators, and then on Thursday, I think it's reversed, where the Lightning are in Montreal and the Panthers are here in Ottawa. And then Ottawa, I think, has a back-to-back Islanders-Devils, and then they finish home Toronto.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, well, they're playing Toronto out of the playoffs. They're playing Florida out of the playoffs. They're playing the Devils, who are going to be out of the playoffs. The Islander game could be a very big game, particularly if the Islanders are not in the top 3 and going for one of those wild card spots that Ottawa wants. Presumably second wild card. But, I mean, Florida just hammered them down in Sunrise, Ottawa I'm talking about. And let me tell you this. If the Ottawa Senators need a win in Game 82 at home against their arch rivals, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are the Ottawa Senators' biggest rival, no doubt, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs would take great pleasure in beating Ottawa and knocking the Senators out of the playoffs.
Would there be any
that
pillow
could be
fighting?
A tricky game.
Would there be any pillow fighting in that game?
Well, look, the teams out west are trying. Nashville got a point. LA won in a shootout. San Jose won last night. Winnipeg won. I cannot believe Winnipeg and St. Louis are actually in contention to get to the second wild card. Coming out of the Olympic break, it seemed like they were done.
Just massive games tonight. Blue Jackets at the Red Wings.
That is a massive game.
That's a massive game because
they'll all be rooting for the Lightning to beat Ottawa, too.
Yeah. Did it not feel like the Blue Jackets maybe had a little bit of the inside track just almost a week ago, 10 days ago?
Yeah.
And now
I think that they have one win in 5 or 6. Like, they have just they've started to sink like an anchor. You start piling up the regulation losses.
Yeah,
they had a tough schedule, too. They had the back-to-back or a home-and-home, I should say, with Carolina. Carolina beat them twice. They lost in the last 90 seconds to San Jose. I mentioned that at home, so they didn't get any points out of that game. They were up against Winnipeg and lost 2-1 in regulation in their last game. That was a game in Columbus. So, and other teams have done well enough to overtake them, basically.
It speaks to, by the way, you have to navigate the current when you have a tough stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And then when your stretch lightens up, you've got to get points.
Yeah.
And you don't know when those tough stretches are going to come. So you'd mentioned, look, Columbus may be going through a rough patch, facing some tough teams, maybe the circumstances. You got to find a way to keep your head above water.
Yes.
Because then when the schedule lightens up potentially in your favor, then you can make up those points. But if you end up going through a streak where you lose multiple games in a row,
like the Islanders,
tough. They've
lost
the Islanders
4 in a row.
The Islanders, and conversely, I think a couple of teams have done better than most in the Metro, the Flyers and the Penguins.
Yeah.
Because now you're looking at, originally you thought maybe it was going to be Columbus, in that spot, and the Islanders, and it just doesn't look like, at least right now. I mean, the Bruins are at the Hurricanes, Flyers at the Devils, and the Blue Jackets are at the Red Wings. Those are all games that are going to be impacting, second or third place potentially in the Metro, but more importantly in the wild card. So we'll see how it plays
in the
out.
Metro, I mean, Pittsburgh has kind of managed to, I'll say, do a little better than tread water. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and they had those. So basically, they won 4 or 5, right? They won those 2 huge games that they needed at Islanders, home Detroit. They lost to the Lightning, and then they beat the Panthers back to back. That's 4-1 in their last 5. That's really helped them. And they, unless something strange happens, they're going to get in the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to finish second, but they certainly have an inside track to finishing second. They're in good shape as far as the tiebreaker, I should say, with regulation wins. But listen to these 3 teams, their last 10 games. Last 10 games, New York Islanders, 3-7. Columbus Blue Jackets, 3-6-1. Philadelphia Flyers, 7-3.
There you go.
So in the last 10, and I don't have like a shorter sample size than that, the Flyers have gained 14 points and the Islanders have gained 6. And the Jackets have gained 7. That's how you make up ground. And they passed not just 1, but 2 teams, which is very hard to do. The Flyers I'm talking about. That's how they got into 3rd.
Yep.
But Devils have been sneaky good. Like the Devils just beat Montreal, right? Like they're like, we're going to play the Devils. I said that about Ottawa too. That's the second half of a back-to-back for Ottawa later in the year. At Islanders, at Devils. That at Islanders game is going to be a huge game for Ottawa. So they're going to have to make sure they take care of business against the Devils too. The Devils have kind of been the upset the apple cart team here in the last few weeks.
Eric Erlinson, our Lightning insider, this was about an hour ago.
Yeah, I haven't checked in with Eric.
He said the Lightning are calling up both Connor Geekie and Dylan Duke ahead of tonight's game. With Pontus Holmberg injury last night with the 2 call-ups might suggest another injury perhaps to Scott Sabrin, who missed previous 2 games and only 5 minutes last night.
They protected him. He did play regularly in the 3rd period, and maybe they wanted him in the lineup in case there was some funny business with Buffalo. It does not seem that Ottawa is going to be engaged in any kind of funny business. The Senators absolutely need 2 points tonight. So if Sabrin is nursing something, that kind of makes sense, and it would just be another guy that they would add to their injured list, whether he is actually going on IR or not. IR is different than LTIR, but IR does mean that you have to miss a week.
He's also saying that Peltier add him to the list of players being called up for tonight. So he said, would imagine that Braden Point might join the list of players unavailable for tonight's game in Ottawa.
So Peltier, Duke, and Geekie.
Yes, with Chafee going down.
Okay.
He says it would appear that Mitchell Chafee has been sent back down to Syracuse. Lots of roster juggling and updates right now. So
I wonder if the Chafee move, because Chafee has done fine, and I thought his best game was his first game, but I wonder if a little bit of that, Puckpedia would have this information if they needed to create a little cap space. Because the other guys coming up, maybe make a little less than Chafee.
And if that's the case, you could get some more juice into the lineup.
Yeah.
Some guys getting called up. I mean, that's, if anything, you want that from guys who are trying to make a name for themselves.
The other thing, too, is like sometimes when you come up just and you've been playing well in the minors, you're segueing to an NHL team and playing with some players that you haven't been playing with recently. If Duke and Peltier and Geekie have spent a lot of time playing together, I don't know if they've been on a line together or playing the power play together. I would imagine they are playing on the power play. At least there's some familiarity, right? You come up together, maybe you spend some time on the ice together as a line or 2 of the 3 players on a line. Who knows? So I'm looking it up right now. Let me see. So Chafee makes barely over the minimum, $800. So that's not, I don't know. That to me seems more like this was a move based on just who you want up. Peltier makes $775. Duke makes $867.5, so that's more than Chafee. And Geekie makes $886. So they're all kind of in the same range. But maybe because they wanted to call up the 3, they had to send one down.
Yeah. That's...
Syracuse has clinched a playoff spot, by the way. Yeah. They are very, very much in a tight race with Laval for first place in their division. I do believe first place gets an advantage in that you get, I think, if I'm remembering right, 4 and 5 play almost a play-in, and the 1 gets to wait for 4 or 5, 2 has to play 3. So there is an advantage. It's not a slam dunk advantage, but there is an advantage to finishing first. And Syracuse, that's what Syracuse is still playing for because they've clinched a playoff spot. I don't think there's any danger of Syracuse falling into 3rd, but Let me take a quick check at the standings. Not that, like, if the Lightning need to call up players, they're going to call up players. But right now, Laval has 87 points. Syracuse has 85 points. Syracuse has a game in hand. The next closest team is 7 points back of Syracuse. So it's a 2-team race for first. And I think they play 72. There'll be 5 games left for the crunch.
There you go.
Yeah.
An update. Joe, he says, is it me, or does it seem that Bjorkstrand has been playing soft and not making quick enough NHL hockey decisions on the ice? Also, didn't he play better with Yanni since they played together back in Seattle?
Well, look, it's probably pretty easy to pick on Bjorkstrand because, he's had a tough year. I think he's trying. I think he had one of the games where he came back in. You even mentioned that he had a little extra something to his game. So, yes, he played with Gord in a shutdown role. Yeah, that's why I said they may slot him in with Gord and Gergensons in Holmberg's absence. But I don't think their biggest issue last night was the fact that Oliver Bjorkstrand wasn't like firing 5 shots on net. I think they were off as a team. And, emotionally, I'm not sure that they were quite there. I think the Sabres were a little bit more invested emotionally. The Sabres are also coming off back-to-back losses. They wanted to turn things around. It was their first home game since they clinched a playoff spot. The crowd was amped up based on what they had accomplished, clinching the playoff spot, the rematch with the Lightning. The wind was just blowing in Buffalo's direction, like at the Sabres' back, not in their face, and give them credit. I thought they went out and they played a pretty good game. The Lightning didn't. Not well enough, anyway.
Yep. Let's get to this question. By the way, Bjorkstrand, I just think I don't know what to expect from him come playoff time. I don't. Mm-hmm. I do think there is a confidence problem with him, and sometimes that does happen when you struggle.
Yeah, he played almost 15 minutes last night. I mean, I'm not a big hit stat guy. That he'd have 5 hits, which was tied for the most on the team.
Yeah. Vlad says, in my opinion, the results of the remaining matches are not as important as the health, recovery, and rest of our players. I mean, it's fair.
I think John Cooper agrees with you.
It's fair. Lightboard said, this is exactly what I was saying yesterday about the Sabres playing hard against the Lightning. Injuries resulting from games with them or Panthers seems to be high.
So the one injury, we talked about the Samuelson play. Point was able to finish the game. So to me, this is more of it's a back-to-back rest-up pointer. Get right for the playoffs. I think he's going to be able to play. I shouldn't say that. I don't know what his status is, but he was able to finish the game. So it wasn't an injury that knocked him out of the game. Holmberg plays hard. The implication there is almost like the Lightning took their foot off the gas. When you take your foot off the gas against a team that's really revving, you can get hurt. That is true. I believe that is true. I've never seen Pontus Holmberg play a game where he has taken his foot off the gas. He is trying to drive up the wing on that play, and Krebs checks him. He has the puck. He's eligible to be checked. It was a clean hockey play with a bad result made worse by bad luck, right? Where he went into the boards with the penalty box door and everything else. But to somehow imply that, the Lightning didn't play as hard, that's why Holmberg got hurt. I don't buy that.
He plays
that
hard.
Could have happened in any game.
Yeah.
That could have happened in any game this year. It could have.
Anthony says, I would prefer this whole game being like the sleepy first. Holmberg was such a valuable piece. Looks like 22 will play his role. I think the problem against Buffalo is breakout. Should use weak side more.
That's the other side of the ice from where the puck is. I don't know. You have to read what's coming at you. Some of what the Sabres did, though, was in the neutral zone. So the Lightning actually broke out of their own end fine. It was through the neutral zone that they had a problem. That's what happened on the Norris goal. The turnover happened in the neutral zone. Maybe that's what the fan is talking about, through the neutral zone. But the Lightning know what they need to do in every situation, depending on what is coming at them. When they are clicking, they are making if not the right decision every single time, usually the better decision. So executing is about making the right decision and then executing that decision properly.
Yeah.
So the pass is tape to tape.
Would agree.
And last night, we didn't see enough of that.
This was Jim yesterday, our good buddy from Jack. So he said, after Saturday's game, did the NHL ever come up with an explanation on the penalty kill clock issue, and especially why play wasn't stopped immediately when it was first noticed? I'm sure if a goal was scored after 2 minutes of real time, it would have been taken off the board. Thanks, guys.
I'm not so sure, Jim. I would like to think it would be. I think nobody noticed when it happened, and it was off. Like, they took almost like a minute and a half or so, minute and change.
Yeah.
Like, when they finally figured it out, it was like 8:13 left in the period, and they took it to 7. The clock was not stopped for 73 seconds. Right. It was stopped for some amount of time, though, and nobody knew how much time it stopped. No, there was nothing from the league. I think they did the best they could to tape that thing back together, and both teams were like, it's fine. Like, let's just play. Right. I mean, but yes, the Bruins got longer than a 2-minute power play. I'm not quite sure what they would have done.
I don't know either.
I think the league is very glad that no goal was scored during that sequence.
That was a weird one. I think we've seen a couple of weird things happen.
Yes, we have.
And it's unfortunate. But
we've seen much consternation at the penalty timekeepers area this year in various games.
Zebra says, even if the Sabres had won 10-2 last night, they still would never be favored against the Lightning in a 7-game playoff series. Experience matters.
Well, favored. I mean, the odds makers are setting this. You know, sometimes the odds makers get it wrong. I don't really know what he means by favored. Like, Buffalo fans are going to think, well, the Sabres are doing really well against the Lightning. The Sabres will be favored.
National people.
They have every right to think that. Well, I mean, how many people picked the Lightning to beat the Panthers last year?
Yeah.
A lot.
Sure.
And they were all wrong, the ones that picked the Lightning. The point is that when the playoffs begin, the Lightning know they're going to have to reach a certain level. They would like to have as close to a full lineup to be able to reach that level. It is usually unlikely that you have everybody healthy, everybody ready to go at the beginning of a playoff run. Assuming this Holmberg injury is going to extend into the playoffs. You know, they're not going to be. But that doesn't mean they can't win a playoff series. To win a playoff series, though, you need to play at a very high level. Usually the team that plays that higher level wins.
We'll end on this question. B-Love says, regular season is almost over. How would you describe this team, and what are some key takeaways for you from this season? I think this has been one of the most exciting seasons in a very long time.
I think some fans have said that to us, and hopefully most fans, if not all fans, share that sentiment, is because we've had some really interesting storylines this year and some new faces emerge or some familiar faces grow into new roles. And that is always exciting. That has been the takeaway for me. Why the Lightning are where they are, it's because they've been able to navigate key losses.
That's true.
To significant players and lean on players that we didn't know about maybe at the start of training camp and other players that have taken on expanded roles. And also Kucherov having another world-class season.
That's exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head, partner, and I'm glad you did. I think this year has been, can you say, more exciting on a couple of different levels. One, through no fault of the Lightning, this is more of outside of the bubble. I don't think a lot of people anticipated the Lightning would be this good this year. And maybe some Lightning fans bought into that the window potentially was closing. And so when you have a year like this, when it looks like you are one of the best teams still in the league, I think it raises your eyebrow. But I think fans are excited, even more so because of the young talent that has been discovered. I do think guys like Dominic James, the Lillebergs, the Croziers, and name a few others who have come up and have played pretty well. Maybe a little bit of the emergence of Gage Gonsalves to a lesser extent. I think has given people hope that in addition to the core that they have, they're going to be supported in a way that allows them to continue to keep that window open because the young talent is coming through the system and helping. And we haven't even talked too much about Connor Geeky and some of the other younger guys down there. Obviously, the Kucherov, his banner year. I also think, too, there's been more national recognition for Kucherov for MVP.
Yes.
And maybe Coop for Coach of the Year.
Agreed.
And so I think people get wrapped into that. And let's face it, too, the Olympics happened this year, and you had a lot of representation. So there was excitement watching some of those players participate. So I think a lot of things kind of came together this year, and the Lightning have been one of the better stories this season. And it's been fun to watch, and I think that's why we're so excited once the playoffs do begin, that this is a team who's going to be tough to handle. And it doesn't mean they're going to win it all, but tough to John Cooper speaks glowingly of this team. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Talks well about all of his teams, but he says this group is special.
Yeah.
This group is special. He likes them. He figures they got it in their DNA to figure some things out. They're coachable, it sounds like, as well, and I think that's exciting. But it's a good observation, B-Love, and we appreciate the comments. Partner, I'm going to talk to you in about 6 hours or so as we get you set for Lightning and Sens. And you'll be on with Patty.
We're live tomorrow, correct? The Lightning bus to Montreal after the game.
If it helps you, we go live.
Well,
you let us know.
Live means the fans can tweet at us or post at us, and we can usually respond.
We usually like that interaction.
Time,
Sometimes we have to tape because of logistics, but if we can go live, let's go live. We'll check with Steve, but outside of that, I'll talk to you guys tonight, and then we'll be back at it again tomorrow talking about the game.
Sounds good.
Good job, as always. Thanks to
You
Steve
too.
Versnick as well, producing. Thanks to all of you for listening. Keep those questions and comments coming here on the show. Hit us up on X @Bolts Radio. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.